Isaac Burton was born on September 8th, 1765, in Stratford, Connecticut. Through life, he quite literally watched the foundations of America be built around him. In fact, he was given the title captain because he served in the Revolutionary War. In 1788, he married his first wife, Rachel Harris. However, Rachel became sick with an illness called consumption, which, as we know now and call today, tuberculosis or TB. She would tragically pass in 1790 at the young age of 21. As Isaac Burton grieved in the home him and his late wife built, he met Huldah Powell, which he would marry just a year later. Once again, Huldah Powell fell ill with tuberculosis, but no doctor could help her. A rumor spread across town that the late Rachel Harris was to blame, as it was claimed she was a vampire who was draining Huldah Powell's life. The townsfolk were convinced they had their culprit, so they dug up Rachel's body and took every precaution they deemed necessary to make sure she stayed dead. Judge John S. Pettibone wrote, "They took out the liver, heart, and lungs, what remained of them, and burned them to ashes on the blacksmith's forge of Jacob Mead. Timothy Mead officiated at the altar in the sacrifice to the demon vampire, who it was believed was still sucking the blood of the then living wife of Captain Burton. It was the month of February and good sleighing. Such was the excitement that from 500 to 1,000 people were present. This account was furnished me by an eyewitness of the transaction." Despite their efforts, Huldah's condition declined, and she would also pass away in 1793. It should be no surprise that something like this happened. A similar situation is the Salem witch trial in the 1690s in Massachusetts, when the townspeople accused over 200 people of witchcraft, which resulted in 20 executions. However, that's a little off topic. Rather than there being supposed witches, now there were vampires, sapping the life out of the living. Many times this was directly caused by people dying of tuberculosis. If you aren't aware, tuberculosis is an infection that spreads extremely easily in families. It spreads through coughs and sneezes, as all you have to do to contract it is inhale it in the air. At first, you get a fever, you become tired, and you start coughing. As time goes on, it only gets worse. The fever worsens, you cough up blood, your entire body aches with increasing pain, weight loss, and more of what you'd pretty much expect from an illness like this one. Tuberculosis was a huge problem in the 18th and 19th century. It was pretty much a death sentence because our understanding of it was lackluster, to say the least. So you had all these people. They got tuberculosis, they would die, they would be buried, then their family members would show signs of tuberculosis as well. Then they would blame the dead person for draining their life, so they would exhume the body and it would be burned in a ritual. Now that we're back on track, there are plenty of stories like the first one I went over about these vampires being dug up and getting killed, in a sense, I guess. In 1788, Reverend Justice Forward and his wife had 5 daughters. 3 of them died, and 2 of them were sick. "This morning opened the grave of my daughter, Martha, who had died, the last of my 3 daughters almost 6 years ago. On opening the body, the lungs were not dissolved, but had blood in them, although not fresh, but clotted. The lungs did not appear as we would suppose they would in a body just dead, but far nearer to a state of soundness than could be expected. The liver, I am told, was as sound as lungs. We put the lungs and liver in a separate box and buried it in the same grave, 10 inches or a foot above the coffin." Their last daughter to die was Mercy, just 6 months later. In the book, Historical Collections of Ohio, in 3 volumes, there's an excerpt of a family living in Scioto County, Ohio, that was struck by the illness and, like everyone else, tried anything for the cure. The family of Philip Saladay came from Switzerland, bought and settled on a lot in the French Grant soon after the opening of the country for settlement. Hereditary consumption developed itself in the family sometime after their location in Scioto County. The head of the family and the oldest son had died of it, and others began to manifest symptoms. When an attempt was made to arrest the progress of the disease by a process which has been practiced in numerous instances but without success, they resolved to disinter one of the victims, take his entrails, and burn them in a fire prepared for the purpose in the presence of the surviving members of the family. This was accordingly done in the winter of 1816 to 1817, in the presence of a large concourse of spectators who lived in the surrounding neighborhood, and by Major Ambrose Wheeler of Wheelersburg. Samuel Saladay was the one they disinterred and offered up as a sacrifice to stop, if possible, the further spread of the disease. But like other superstitious notions with regard to curing diseases, it proved of no avail. The other members of the family continued to die off until the last one was gone, except George. By far, the most well-known case, due to it being one of the best documented, is of Mercy Brown in 1892. George Brown watched as consumption began making its way through the Brown family, and his wife, Mary Eliza, was the first to die from the illness. And after that was their daughter, Mary Olive, in 1884. In 1891, symptoms of consumption began for George's daughter and son, Mercy and Edwin. Mercy died a year later. George, now desperate for a possible explanation, was allowed to exhume Mary Eliza and Mary Olive's bodies. However, they concluded that they were as they should be, dead. Upon examining Mercy's body, however, her body reportedly showed almost no signs of decomposition, still had blood in her heart. Her liver and heart were taken out and were burned, and the ashes were mixed with water to create a medicine that was supposed to cure Edwin's sickness. 2 months later, Edwin would die anyways, and whatever was left of Mercy's body was reburied. My heart honestly goes out to Edwin because he drank the ashes of his sister's heart and liver, and he still died. That's haunting. That's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. And despite their house being an apparent cesspit of tuberculosis, like many houses in that time period, George never contracted it and lived till 1922. In fact, from some sick joke, I guess, he was able to see the vaccine, which has to feel like a punch in the balls in this case. Dr. Lucy Weston Abel studied medicine in 1857 at the New England Female Medical College in Boston and later graduated from the Pennsylvania Medical University of Philadelphia in 1860. And then later established the Ladies' Psychological Society, which was used to give medical treatment, education, and support to poor women. Although she wasn't a victim of the panic herself, she wrote about it, and it highlights a very important aspect of this phenomenon. I should be sorry to be understood as recommending drunkenness as a cure for consumption, but I have known several instances where nearly all the family, from 5 to 9 children, have successively died of phthisis. Finally, one of the boys, from sheer desperation, took to excessive drinking of alcoholic stimulants. These boys are now past middle life and enjoying good health when last heard from. In 2 families, not less than 5 or 6 victims in each were carried off by consumption. In each, there was always one sick, and a short time before death, another would be prostrated. In one family, they resorted to that horrible relic of superstition, the burning of the heart, etc., of the dead, and the ashes were swallowed by the survivors in the hopes that the fatal demon would be exorcised from the family, but it did not avail. But another son fell a victim, and then the alcoholic treatment was tried not as an expected remedy, but as a means of forgetfulness of impending doom, and no deaths in the family have, to my knowledge, since occurred. I love this quote because she's trying so hard to... I love this quote because she's trying so hard to avoid... She's trying so hard to avoid, I can't think now. She's trying so hard to avoid saying that alcoholism was some type of treatment or cure for consumption, when all it was a byproduct of watching your family go through this mess, I guess, this horrific reality that these people had to face. And second of all, I think it highlights a very important aspect of this whole thing. Dr. Lucy Abel is an educated woman, and for the most part, the vampire panic affected the uneducated population. Of course, there will always be a few exceptions, but it was most common in less educated areas. The sad truth of the matter is, the more poor and less intelligent populations resorted to superstition more than the college-going, well-off population. I don't even blame them either, because they were just desperate for a vaccine, which came in 1921, and decent treatment that wouldn't come until 1943, when streptomycin was discovered. And on top of that, it wasn't even that great, because the bacteria it was trying to fight against would build up a resistance against the medicine, so it had to be used in a combination of other antibiotics. What really got me during the research of this was I can't imagine how it must have felt to go through this, how these people I talked about today had nothing to hold on to, and all they really thought was their loved ones had turned into monsters once they have died. And when they were buried, they were just sucking the life force out of the rest of the family, like a monster. It goes without saying, tuberculosis sucks, and it's no wonder why it has nicknames like Consumption, the White Plague, and even the captain of all these men of death. Oh, and because I have to mention it, the newspapers themselves were calling these vampires when no one in the affected communities would, because it wasn't a common term for them. And in case you want to look into this more yourself, there were also no stories of blood sucking. Sorry to burst your bubble. And honestly, it wasn't as fun as I thought it would be of a topic. Thought it's more like, oh, fun vampire stories, you know? Yeah, no, this is depressing as shit. There's nothing more scary than thinking that after death, your loved one was turned into something that you hate or something that's evil, and then you have to do something about it, and no matter what you do, it doesn't work. Yeah, and I'll leave you with that. Sorry. I apologize if the audio wasn't up to your standard or something. I am really trying my hardest with this audio shit, but I hate it. I'll get used to it. Maybe I'll get good at it. Possibly. Yeah, so apologies if audio seemed all over the place. I really tried my best. Re-recorded a shit ton, I can tell you that much. And yeah, thank you anyways. If you hated it, let me know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit that little thumbs up icon. If I missed anything or you have something to add, comment below. Throw whatever you got at me. Thank you for watching. Drive safe. Sleep good. Enjoy your day at work or whatever else you're doing today. And I hope to see you in the next one.
Almost time for Halloween. Don't come to my house or else I'll suck your dick. Blood. I'll suck your blood. Oh, shit.